Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rebecca, aka Crafting Journey, and I recap live trials so you have something to listen to while you're crafting. Yes, I diamond paint, crochet, watercolor paint, I don't know, a bunch of stuff. I do a lot of stuff. Cross stitch. Anyway, currently covering the trial of Chad Daybell. Now, if you're a crafter and you want to show off your works in progress, you can put pictures of them in my Facebook group, Crafting Journey Facebook group. So, day 9 of the trial of Chad Daybell. He is on trial for the murders of his current wife's children, Tylee Ryan, who was 17 at the time of her murder, and J.J. Vallow, who was 7 at the time of his murder. Also, he's on trial for the murder of his former wife, Tammy Daybell. Yeah, oh my God, that's a lot, right? Plus some insurance fraud that's going to come in here as well. So I'm going to talk about 2 people. David Warwick was on the stand, and he started on the stand the night before. So this is like the night of the 8th, you know, the trial, day 8 going into the 9th. And then after that, we're going to talk about Brandon Boudreaux. Now, who is he? I'm going to tell you. I wish I had a timeline, a who's who chart for all of these people. My God. All right. Who's David Warwick? David Warwick is married to Melanie Gibb. Melanie was on the stand earlier, and she is one of the inner circle for Chad's cult. And I say cult because his teachings were way outside the fringe of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm talking way out on the fringes. So he said, David Warwick said he met Chad in 2012 when Chad reached out to him. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but Chad and his wife, Tammy, owned this publishing company. Well, Chad had reached out to David Warwick, who was known in the Latter-day Saints as this person who had visions, and he would talk to people about his conversions and his visions. And so Chad said, do you want to write a book? And he was like, he didn't commit. He says, I never committed to Chad, but Chad kept calling him and saying, as if he had committed. Hey, are you ready to do this? And I don't think he ever did it. So in the fall of 2015, he was attending a meeting about the darkness of the world. Now, apparently this light dark theme is a thing in that religion, but he likened it to like good and evil. Some families will talk about good and evil, and some religions talk about good and evil. They talk about light and dark. So he was going to a meeting about darkness in the world. Well, he didn't want to leave the meeting, but Chad kept saying, come on, we're having this other meeting. And so finally he goes with Chad to Chad's house for a meeting. He talks about Chad as being very meek, humble, kind, that kind of guy. But later on in his testimony, he's going to call him manipulative. Yeah, he said he was very manipulative. He said that he likes to get people's confidence and then uses that for his benefit. That describes Chad perfectly. So he was all about Chad. He knew who Chad was. So he met him again in August of 2019 at Lori's house with Melanie. Now, when he first met Melanie, he was also married, but only because he didn't realize how long it was going to take to get a divorce. He had signed all the paperwork and didn't realize after you sign that all, there's a period of time where you have to wait before it's finalized. So that he was in that kind of waiting period. So he had decided to go to Lori's house in August of 2019. There was some conference that he and Melanie were going to go to that weekend. And so he said Lori had dinner for them all. They were all having dinner. Chad was there. And he talked about who, the inner circle was there. And he said they were talking about the 144,000 and that it was Chad and Lori's calling to gather all of those people, to gather the 144,000 together. I don't know if they were going to do that on Chad's property. Sounds like it. They were just going to set up tents, apparently. I'm not kidding. I'm not being facetious. Yeah, they were going to set up tents. So then they were talking about special gifts that different people had. And as an example, he said, Zulema. Now, you may have heard me mention Zulema here and there. She was one of these people that was part of the inner circle. And she actually married, right after Thanksgiving of 2019, marries Alex Koch. And days later, Alex is dead. So her special gift was power over the elements. So when I heard that, I'm thinking, now how can I relate this to Alex's death of a pulmonary embolus? Did she have that kind of power? What kind of element could have caused a pulmonary embolus? That's a blood clot in your lungs. So I don't know, just a passing thought. Anyway, another power was Alex apparently was some kind of an angel, and he went an angel in some story, and he went on into this story, and I cannot relay that to you because I've never heard of the story before, and that Satan had the power to take spirits or put spirits into people's body, and when those spirits came out of the body would just hang in limbo. This is dinner conversation, guys. Dinner conversation. Yeah. So, yeah, he said at this dinner, Chad and Lori seemed very close, which he thought was odd because he knew that Chad was married to Tammy Daybell. So he thought this is kind of odd, even though like he was still married. But anyway, yeah. So they went again. He went again to Melanie's condo in September of 2019 for that weekend. It's the 19th, 20, 21, 22, that whatever the days were on that weekend of 2019. He goes with Melanie to Lori's condo, and their plan was to do a podcast. They had a conference they were going to. They were going to do a podcast. Now he said that Saturday he went. He was staying. They were going to stay at a hotel. Lori's like, no, we got plenty of room. You can stay at our house. The children are dead. Their rooms are empty. I'm just saying that. Lori didn't say that anyway. So when he gets there, he sees JJ. JJ, he said he had a couple of interactions with JJ. JJ was sitting on the couch playing a game, and he tried to interact with him, and JJ was so focused on the game, he was not going to give him any attention. And then he said later on he was making a toy house out of a cardboard box. How cute is that? He said during that weekend, Chad was in and out. He would, he said he saw him on Saturday, and the defense attorney tried to make a real thing about that. You didn't really see Chad that Saturday. He's like, no, I saw Chad that Saturday. Weren't you at a conference? He goes, I didn't stay all day at the conference, but yes, I saw Chad that Saturday and I had a conversation with him. So then there was a day when he said it was this weekend. I don't know when during that weekend, but he had learned from Chad and Lori that they had been together in prior probations or prior lives. And then on Sunday, this is the strangest thing, you guys. This is so weird. Chad and Lori take Melanie and David Warwick to this park because they wanted to show him this terrestrial building. Now, so they're showing him this building, and they're describing the building. It's it's got stones and arches, and it's 2 stories. And he's like, there was no building there. I didn't see a building. I don't know what they were looking at. I didn't see a building. And he goes, he says, I didn't believe that they really saw that building. Yeah. How weird. Okay. So the last time he saw JJ was that Sunday evening, about 10:30, 11, when Alex came back with JJ from his condo. JJ was sleeping in Alex's arms. He has little red pajamas on, and he took him up to the bedrooms to go to sleep. That was the last time he saw JJ. He did not see Tylee at all that weekend. He said that's Sunday so that's Sunday night they did their podcast. He said that ended around 11-ish, and then they go to bed. And then when they wake up the next morning, he wants to say goodbye to JJ. And he says to Lori, where's JJ? And she said, oh, he was having a possession attack. So she had to send him over to Alex. She had to call Alex to come get him. But she said he had been climbing off of the cabinets and the refrigerator and knocked over a picture of Jesus. And this guy, David Warwick, is a builder by trade. And he said, I looked at those cabinets. There was no scuff marks on them. There were things on this cabinet that would have broken if the 7-year-old was climbing on it. And he says, I didn't see any smudges on the refrigerator. The picture was back where it was, he said, I just didn't see, any evidence that this child was going crazy and climbing cabinets. Anyway. David Warwick admitted that he did have visions, and that one of the visions that he had was foreign powers taking over our country. But most of his other visions were religious in nature. And in June of 2020, he was very angry at Chad, very angry, because this is when they discovered the children's bodies, and Chad called Melanie and told her to lie to the police. He was really, really angry with Chad for that. And this is when he started calling him manipulative and so on and so forth. Okay, let's get to Brandon Boudreaux. Now, Brandon was married to Melanie Boudreaux. Her last name now is Pulaski. They were married for 10 years, since 2008. They had 4 children. Their ages now are 14, 10, 8, and 7. So very young at the time that all this goes down. So Lori was Melanie's aunt, and Alex, Lori's brother, was Melanie's uncle. And he said, up until late 2018, Melanie really had no interest in religion. He was the religious one. He wanted to go to the temple. He wanted to go to church. And he explained going to temple is different than going to church. He says temple is someplace you might go maybe, you aspire to go to maybe once a month. But church you could go to every Sunday, like everybody. Not everybody, but religious people go to church. I don't. I go to the church of my podcast on Sunday. I do a live. Anyway. And up until then, they had been very close, these two families, Lori and Charles. Lori was married to Charles and Tylee and JJ. Those 4 would spend lots of time with Melanie and Brandon and his 5 kids. 4 kids. They would go to Disneyland. They would go spend vacations together. He said, we always lived in Arizona, but the Vallows would move around. Sometimes they lived in Hawaii. Sometimes they lived in, other places. Sometimes they lived down the street. But they would always spend these times together. And that his son, Braxton, and JJ had bonded. And Braxton was very protective of JJ. He said JJ had a lot of energy, that this was a child, he was autistic, that you had to get ready. If you knew he was coming over, you had to get ready. You had to like make sure there was a way to lock doors, keep him safe, because he's like, first of all, he's really fast and he just had all this energy. So you really had to prepare if you knew you were going to spend time with JJ. He said Tylee would, she was older than the other kids, but she would babysit often for him and his wife, and that she had really good motherly instincts and was very, very protective of JJ. And whenever Brandon would speak about JJ and Tylee, he would start to tear up. It really bothered him. So he said Melanie looked to Lori like a mom. He said Melanie's mom died when she was young. She had a wonderful stepmother, but she was always looking for Lori's approval. Now, up until this time, Melanie was not going to church, but all of a sudden in November of 2018, now this is like a month after Lori meets Chad, Melanie is going to these firesides, and he was asked to explain firesides. He talked about, like, in our religion, Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we have these things called firesides, and they're usually organized by the church. It's just kind of like an extra little get together where we talk about the teachings. But in these meetings Melanie was going to, it was people that were out, it's all within your ward and your stake, your church community. These meetings Melanie started going to were not sanctioned by the church, and they had people that were outside of their ward, like Chad and Melanie Gibb and Zulema and all these other people. And he was not welcome to go. He says, let me go. He says, I just wanted to go out of curiosity to find out what they were talking about at these meetings. And Melanie told her husband, you're not welcome there. You can't go. Yeah. And they spent Christmas together of December of 2018. And he said it was very different. He felt like the families were changing. He felt like there was a lot of distance between. Lori was not as welcoming. She's doting on the children, and he felt like she just wasn't doing that at all this time. And he tried to talk about that with his wife afterwards, and she said, I didn't see anything different. Yeah, okay. His wife thought it was normal. Yeah, normal. So he talked about the end of January 2019, Lori started talking about Charles. Charles was cheating on her, and she moved out. She took his truck. She said there was a point where she left JJ with Charles and just disappeared. Nobody knew where she was. And he wasn't able to call Charles, or Charles wasn't calling him, and he couldn't figure out why, because he and Charles had grown very close, and they had a lot in common, and he talked about their commonalities, but he said Charles wasn't calling him, and he thought that was strange. And then he found out Charles had been blocked on his cell phone. He goes, I didn't do it, and there's only two people that have access to my phone, and that is me and my wife, Melanie. So he believes Melanie blocked Charles from calling Brandon. Then in June of 2019, he had gone to his in-laws, Melanie's parents' home, for a wedding, the wedding of her younger sister. And during their stay there, he gets a phone call from his parents saying that your grandfather has passed away of a heart attack. So he wants to leave and go to the funeral, and Melanie refuses to go. She won't go. So he left, and he goes to the funeral, and it was after that he and Melanie start divorce proceedings. Melanie accused him of hacking into Lori's computer, of being gay. And when he was asked by the prosecutor, well, did she give you any reason why she thought this? Why she thought you hacked into his computer or thought you were gay? And he's like, no, I have no idea why she thought that. So they started divorce right after the funeral, and it wasn't finalized until October of that year. And then up until then, they shared custody of the kids. But Melanie stopped talking to him, became very cold. Yeah. So then we get to October 2nd, which is the day that there was an attempted shooting on Brandon Boudreaux. And I'm going to let him describe that to you. Listen to what he says happened that day.
Your wife, Melanie Boudreaux, at the end of September, beginning of October. Did anything happen at the beginning of October of 2019 that affected that situation?
Yes.
What was that?
On October 2nd of 2019, someone parked in front of my house and shot at me and tried to kill me.
Okay. Let's talk about that. October 2nd, you said?
Yes.
Let's go to the kind of the beginning of the day. How did your day start?
I woke up, I had all my kids at my house, so I got them ready for school, and then I got them out the door. We did our normal stuff, breakfast, prayer, and then I dropped the older two at school, and the younger one, the second youngest, at a preschool, and then I dropped my youngest at Melanie's house.
Right. After you dropped your kids off, where did you go next?
Then I went to the gym.
Okay. This is all in that same area, Gilbert, Arizona.
Yes.
And after the gym, where did you go?
Then I drove back to my house, and as I was driving around, my house is a couple of houses in on the street, so I made a left in onto the street. And as I was driving, I noticed a few things. My house, the driveway, there was like a Jeep parked right on the edge of it, where I would normally turn in, and there was nothing parked there usually. I'd only been there for a few days, but so far it was always, there was this van there, and like the Jeep was parked with its like bumper basically on the van. And it just looked at that place. It had a Texas license plate. There was no tire on the back of the Jeep. And you know how when you open and close a Jeep, there's like little tabs on the window. Those were sitting on the outside of it. So it just looked awkward, just was awkward enough that I noticed it right as I turned around the corner.
Okay. So you noticed the Jeep.
Mhm.
Did you notice anybody inside of it?
I couldn't tell if there was anybody inside of it. This all happened in such, imagine coming around a corner, driving a couple house lengths. So it all happened very quickly. And then the window opened up, and I saw a gun and a silencer. And I would my window shattered. I heard a bang, all kind of in the same amount of time. And my immediate thought was just, I'm getting shot at. And instead of turning my wheel and into my driveway, I just pushed the gas and drove straight forward.
What happened after that?
I drove to where my street ended, and there was a turn, and kind of as I came up to that part, I remember grabbing my phone, calling 911, talking to the operator. I went and pulled a little bit around, and there was like a little community pool there, and I kind of parked in front of it for a second. And there's like a loop between my street and the street above me, and I remember I could see on that loop. I saw that Jeep start to come around the corner, and then it did a U-turn and went the other way. And I think I started to follow it at first, and then I think
were you on the phone with 911 during this time?
Yes, yeah, the whole time I was talking to an operator.
And you just said, if I understand correctly, that you started following the Jeep.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking at the moment, but
did you notify 911 that that's what you were doing?
Yeah, and I believe they told me to pull around and park in front of my house. So I did, and then they told me to wait for police, and they came shortly thereafter.
Okay. I believe you testified, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had only been in this house for a few days.
Yes.
How many people had you told that you were in this house?
Almost nobody. It would happen very quickly because I wasn't supposed to be able to get my kids as soon as I was, but my wife had agreed to let me have them sooner. And so I had moved everything out of the house that was selling to get them in so I could have them for that weekend with me in my house, because I would do anything to keep my kids with me. And
So when Melanie Boudreaux, you were there, had you told anybody else?
so I had to tell her when I got the place. I hadn't told anybody else, but my neighbors had seen me moving and they helped me move. So they knew where I was, just the ones that lived by me there.
So had you told any other friends and family yet this was your new residence?
Just hadn't had time to tell anybody yet. It was so quick, and then I had my kids.
Now, afterwards, he talked about how the police came out, they investigated, his door had been shattered. They've actually found a bullet lodged in the door frame right above where his head would have been. Like, he came that close to being murdered. Probably by Alex Cox. We really believe, I think everybody believes that was Alex Cox in that Jeep. And he talked about how the Jeep had no tire on it. We know that there's video footage right around prior to that time of Lori and Chad putting a tire into a storage. And there's Google searches about, how to take the back seat out of a Jeep right around that time as well. So some pretty strong evidence that Lori and Chad are behind this attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. And afterwards, that day as the police are investigating, he said, the more I thought about it, he says, the more I thought, yeah, this is Tylee's Jeep. And so he actually, because he was in the insurance industry, at one point, Charles had bought that Jeep for Tylee and had called him as an insurance agent and asked him if he could insure the Jeep. And so he had all the Jeep information, the VIN number. So he turned that over to the police. So on June 9th is the day that he learned about the kids being found buried in Charles's backyard. But he had plans to get married the next day. Brandon had met someone and they were getting married the next day. So he went ahead and he got married, and then he decided he needed to drive to Rexburg after the kids were found. And when he did, he was asked by the police to identify the body of JJ. And luckily he didn't. It wasn't like, where they go into the morgue and they pull out the tray. It wasn't like that. He was shown pictures. And obviously be very emotional when he was talking about this, but he had to tell them, yeah, this was JJ. So sad. Now, there was nothing to identify with Tylee, so nobody could identify that. Her body was so badly charred and burned, it was just nothing to identify. So sad. So that was his testimony. I mean, some interesting testimony yesterday, guys. So this just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Yeah. I've never had a case this weird. I am sure the jury is thinking, what in the hell did I get myself into here? What is going on here? These people are batshit crazy. Yeah, you got it. Oh my God. One thing I will add that after the attempted shooting, Brandon hires a private investigator. He starts going through Charles's old emails because he wants to learn, like, what is going on? What is it these people are believing? Like, what is going on here? And he found next to his name, they had indicated he was dark. Yeah. So they were out to kill him. Now, there was no talk about this, but I know that later on he gets full custody of those kids. And there was a time when Melanie showed up to try to get those kids, and the police had to tell her to leave without the kids. But thank God she didn't get those kids, because they might have been dead too, Thank God he took control of those kids. Let's just say thank God. Those 4 kids are safe. Yeah, and away from her. Okay, that's it for today, guys. I will see you. Sorry this is so late today. I slept in. Yay. I got some sleep. Ooh, ooh, ooh. All right, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow in Crafting and Crime Daily. Bye, everybody.